placemaking for recovery, because we need to figure out how the placemaking community, how placemaking can help drive the recovery for all kinds of communities. We collectively create a roadmap, a set of inspiring examples, solutions, and a team of people around the world that can facilitate and support communities to recover through placemaking.
Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner, AFRI. AFRI is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. Today we have great people from so many different cities, and I'm so honored to have them on the podcast. We're going to talk 100% placemaking. I have the pleasure to welcome Guillermo from Mexico City, Ethan from New York City, and Charlot from Amsterdam. Hey, and welcome to Urbanistica podcast.
Hi.
Hi.
Cheers, Mustafa. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving your time to record the episode. I see you're sitting in different places, spaces. So let's start with you, Ethan. How are you doing? Where are you now?
So I'm here in New York, in Brooklyn, and loving spending a lot of time in my neighborhood with my family, with my neighbors, just walking, around, biking around. It's a nice slow time to sort of reconnect with the community and with what matters most in life. Yeah.
Great to hear. So Charlotte, you're in Amsterdam, I guess. You're a lovely city.
Absolutely, and thank you for having us, Mustafa, on the show today. I'm based in Amsterdam and also working from Amsterdam from home right now, like many of us. Like Ethan is saying, enjoying my neighborhood more than ever. And on the other hand, missing all the connections. I'm sometimes a bit over connecting in a virtual space because I really love to work with people physically and in the streets and places that they love. So mixed feelings there.
I can imagine. But thank you for giving your time and being here. So Guillermo, I see it's very sunny, or you have a daylight, at least. I'm a bit jealous here from Sweden. It's a bit dark.
Yeah, I'm in sunny Mexico City, like in eternal spring city. But I'm so happy to be here with you guys, connecting globally and being part of this podcast. It's a fantastic opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And let's start with you. You're our storytellers for this episode. Let's start with you, Ethan. How would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what are you passionate about?
Yeah, so I lead PlacemakingX, which is a global network of passionate placemakers, and I'm passionate about how a focus on people and places can build each other up, can connect each other, and how a focus on placemaking builds our humanity, builds our agency, builds our potential individually and collectively to address our challenges and overcome our obstacles. This is of course, this year has been a challenging year for placemaking for all of us on many levels, but it's also enabling us to connect in new ways and think deeper about the systemic change that's necessary and possible for us all to work together.
Yeah, great to have you again on the podcast. And I guess we have a very interesting story to hear from you. Charlotte, welcome to the podcast. It's your first episode. I'm very honored to have you. So how would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us about your passion.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I'm an urban sociologist and anthropologist by training. And I have a dual hat. I work for STIPO, and we're an interdisciplinary team for urban development that we do a lot of projects in co-creation for urban challenges. And I'm also recently appointed as the director of Placemaking Europe. So leading, together with my colleague Ramon Marades, leading the network of placemakers in Europe and connecting that to the global networks, of course, through PlacemakingX.
Yeah, welcome, and congratulations for your new role in the Placemaking Europe network.
Thank you so much. And as for what I'm passionate about, like I think I'm mostly convinced what I really love about placemaking is the fact that it's a way of working, a process. And I strongly believe that co-creation is our way forward to solve the complex urban challenges that lie ahead of us. So it's really to introduce this to do the tactical urbanism and the small scale initiatives as a means to inspire systemic change, because I really believe that on a higher scale, this is the way forward for all our cities.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you and believe on the same thing. So thank you for joining. And Guillermo, the mic is yours. How would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us about your passion.
I'm Guillermo Bernal. I study urban studies. I'm really passionate in social sustainability strategies to impact communities and impact them in creating great public spaces. And that's what I'm working here in Mexico. And I'm leading the Placemaking Latin America network of PlacemakingX, and I'm part of the PlacemakingX board. And I'm so happy to be here sharing my stories.
Yeah, and it's gonna be great to listen to you. So let's start with the core of this episode. We're gonna have a review about what happened and what did we learn and what are we learning. So Ethan, if we go back pre-pandemic, how was the atmosphere? What was the plan and the goals for PlacemakingX during 2020?
Yeah, so that feels like a long time ago, but yeah, really, last year, going into the beginning of this year, we launched PlacemakingX. Actually, we first launched it in, thanks to Charlot in Valencia with the Placemaking Week Europe last June. And our final global launch was at the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi this February. And of course, that was the middle of February, right when a lot of things were happening in China at the time. And we had celebrated, at the conference, all of our Chinese friends in Wuhan, because we'd recently had a placemaking conference in Wuhan not a year before. And there was a lot of big community with concern for that community there. But our goals this year were actually to start more virtual connection across the regional networks. We had such strong in-person communities around each of the regional networks. Our goals were also to strengthen and build new regional networks. There's now 16 regional networks all over the world. Placemaking Europe and Placemaking Latin America are two of the stronger ones and the earlier ones that others are now learning from. So it's wonderful to have Charlot and Guillermo, sharing. There's many more as well. We've been able to connect those networks, but now start to also work on cross-cutting issues that unite them as well.
And Guillermo, how was it pre-pandemic in the South America? I guess you also started a foundation as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working since 2013 with amazing people like Ethan and I remember Philip Wynn, Megan Walker from Public Spaces creating like these fantastic projects. And we started here in Mexico City in a really amazing park called Parque Mexico, like in Fort Lindbergh. And we just developed this programming and this community strategy to strengthen the links between people sharing their space. So was a fantastic opportunity. And starting from that, then we continue working in Mexico City in different projects. And we just had this rush of creating public space. And after the pandemic, and then everything just stopped. But then we reshape our understanding of how things work.
Yeah, so we will come more to that, like what happened during the pandemic. But what was the goal, like pre-pandemic, before you know that there will be a huge pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, what I thought here in Latin America was to start these really strong national, regional networks. Like first to make strength in our country-based groups, foundations, and then from there start helping other nationalities to start creating these groups. So the Colombian is really strong now, and it's an Argentinian, the Peruvian. So how to create and strengthen our countries and for making strength in the region. So that was my goal, and that's how I started the Mexico Foundation. Was absolutely more a legal and status we just achieved by having so many years of work in public space. So that was how we start the foundation.
Yeah.
And of course, a way to get grants and funding in a different perspective than just doing projects. So that was our goal here in Mexico, and we strengthened very well. And that's how we plan to achieve it through Latin America, through countries, and through the region as a financially sustainable and also very community-based organization.
Yeah, I see very big goals, and I'm very interested to hear what happened during the pandemic and see how did you deal with these plans. So moving to Europe, Charlotte, how was the things? I guess you had 2020 is a big year with the big goals.
Absolutely, we had amazing plans, like everyone else. So Placemaking Europe is just a little bit of a background. We were started as a result, I would say, of the Amsterdam Placemaking Week. So that was the global Placemaking Week that was organized with Project for Public Spaces, the Placemaking Leadership Council that has been spearheaded into PlacemakingX, of course, and organizations like STIPO and Pakhuis de Zwijger and Placemaking Plus in the Netherlands. And that was the moment that the global network got together in 2017. And we thought, from being from Europe, that it was good to also start a spin-off network on the European scale, because it makes it easier for all of us regionally to be connected a bit more intensively and collaborate a bit more intensively. And I think our purpose is to amplify the voices and the efforts of all the placemakers across Europe and connect that globally and learn from each other through PlacemakingX. So that has happened since 2017. The network was building, and we were growing the impact with about 70 or 80 leaders from 30 European countries and about 3,000 members all over Europe that follow our activities more or less. And like Ethan was saying before, in 2019 we were together in Valencia after a smaller conference, Cities for All conference in Stockholm in 2018. Then 2019, we had a full-blown Placemaking Week Europe in the city of Valencia, where we also launched PlacemakingX and many other great projects and programs we do as a network. And yeah, of course, we were looking ahead to 2020, and we were really looking to bring the network together again in another Placemaking Week Europe and continue with some of our thematic working groups and cross-cutting agendas that we formulated with the network. But then 2020 happened; it kicked in.
Tell me more. What happened when the pandemic and then the lockdown? How did you react in the network? Was it a panic?
No, I guess I think what struck me most was the resilience of the network. So you see, if there's existing relationships from previous conferences and a lot of closely knit networks across Europe and the world, you easily see that people do find each other digitally and virtually and find creative ways to stay connected. So I was actually very inspired by the resilience of the network, because within a week's time, I would say, people started organizing webinars and courses and trainings and all kinds of. I even saw digital place games happening also in our own project. And I think that is great, because it definitely shows the need to stay together also in these difficult times. And I do feel that as for ourselves, even though it was a challenging year, it also brought some of the opportunities, because we knew we were in a phase of professionalizing the network. And normally we're going from here to there and being caught up in so many activities, that we actually used the time to strategize a bit and step back and oversee where we were heading with the network. And I think there was definitely an opportunity. But most of all, I'm very happy that everybody kept on organizing placemaking pills and digital exchanges and still inspiring each other, because it's very necessary to remain these connections in these challenging times, I'd say.
It's good to hear that. Did you change the goals and made new goals just during the pandemic, or you just continue with what you had, like the plans, the agenda?
Well, in 2019, I think we one of our takeaways from Placemaking Week Europe was that the next conference we wanted to be it a bit more about the impact of climate change and the contributions that placemaking can do to bridge actually between the more technical solutions in climate adaptation and resilience and sort of the community spirit, and how we can actually use that as a potential to create more lovable places. And that is something that is very much still on the agenda, and even I think amplified in these times, because we all saw that the importance of green spaces and walkability and well, good air quality and bike lanes and everything. It became even more important during the pandemic, I would say. But of course, we have an extra subject added to the agenda that I think we can all talk on a little bit later on. But we really started focusing also on what the country placemaking can do to make sure that all our cities recover economically and socially, and that we don't waste this crisis, but actually use it to its full potential to rethink and rebalance our cities in a better way.
Yeah, exactly. So Ethan, I was watching the numbers, on the statistic, and unfortunately high numbers of COVID and so on. So how was it when the pandemic came to the US? Was it a panic in PlacemakingX there, or how did you react?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a very tough time and sad time here in New York. And one of the right across the street from our home was one of the healthcare facilities that had the highest death rates, actually. And yet at the same time, it was peaceful. It was hard to connect with and understand how it was hitting people even across the street in some ways. Of course, everyone had to sort of worry about their families and connecting with themselves and where they were going to be. And our challenges, our kids weren't even allowed to play outside at the time. And so we actually, we're lucky to get to go to a grandparent's house and be able to help with them as well. But at the same time, we saw people, really wanting to connect digitally and in their communities deeper with their places, with the memories of places and experiences together in places. And then, of course, the people in the network globally, public space advocates and started to realize the opportunity here and the increasing importance of public space to people, but also to driving healthy recoveries and sustaining our livelihoods, supporting each other through this. And so there was incredible creativity. There was some of our Australian colleagues developed something called Porch Placemaking Week, which had people doing activations on their porches, in their streets, all over the world, simultaneously on video, having chats around. There was, of course, here in the U.S., there was also the big, crises and rallies around, Black Lives Matter. And so our Placemaking US network developed a really powerful conversation on race and place, looking particularly at the Black experience of their porch, of the fronts of their homes, and how the stories and connections to place through that action. There was, we also had a couple webinars on public spaces as essential services and how public spaces need to be part of the to be supported and sustained through this, how markets and health outcomes are achieved through public spaces, especially we had one on looking at health outcomes in informal communities in the fast developing parts of the world. And so those webinars are still being used as resources. We had an early webinar on streeteries too, on how the opportunity, with some of the practitioners from around the world that are helping to save restaurants and other businesses and vendors through the use of public space and often parking spaces to facilitate the continued viability of small businesses. Yeah,
so many things have been done during the pandemic. So it was not like a panic February, March. Okay, we should pause everything.
No, not at all. It was a great time to collaborate and work together and learn how to connect digitally, which is something we needed to do more anyway.
Yeah, and I remember it wasn't, I think in March when we recorded our first episode, and I texted you and be like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And it was like, so yeah. Thank you again. Yeah, well, you've led the way on so many efforts on this, and I think that was one of the first webinars I did or podcasts during the pandemic. But of course, and then you've wonderfully interviewed so many of the people from the larger placemaking community and expanded our community and knowledge in so many ways as well. So we're very grateful to your leadership.
throughout
Thank you.
this.
I'm honored to do that. So, Guillermo, tell me, you had these big plans with activating and establishing placemaking groups in different countries. What happened February, March? Well, how did you react, and what was the plan then?
Well, we had like in a national level, we had some donations already in place, so we needed to transform and to adapt our donations for creating public spaces in a different perspective. So that was our first issue, and then really we needed to adapt clearly on recovery and on physical distance and how to create public space that still creates physical distance but bring together people in the place. So that was our challenge, and that's still our challenge right now. We have some ideas like of course flexible furniture, movable, individual use, still maintaining physical distance between people, but it's been a challenge so far. And that's in our base level, but in our regional level, we had this great conference that we were all cheering about in Argentina, and everything just transformed into digital. And I will quote here one of our placemaking leaders from Latin America and globally, like Mariana Alegre. She always says that we've been always living like in a constant crisis in our region. So adapting and changing and transforming, that's part of us, part of our DNA. So that was very well achieved by Carolina Hoffman from Argentina, from our team in Argentina, how they just transformed really in weeks. It was like 6 weeks of transforming their conference into a virtual conference, and the results are fantastic. We got 7 times more people attending the conference that was being expected being in Buenos Aires at that time. So that's fantastic, and how many people connect and how the network just felt really more global and broader, and so many people could join the network and be part of the conferences and the work and sharing their experience. So that's been just a fantastic experience for us. And yeah, this resiliency and this capacity of change between the network, I think that's what makes placemaking in general a great solution for our after COVID work.
Yeah, so it was a kind of, not so easy, but easy to move digitally everything for you, Guillermo, like in the South.
Well, not for me, but for
yeah, like I mean,
we had they're just fantastic people, but this, I think it's inside them, this capacity of change and of transforming what was shown on this transformation, and that's part of our global knowledge we are sharing, our sharing knowledge about how to transform our projects, our little public space we're creating, or our global strategy to what the world is it's asking us to do.
Yeah, I'm so I'm so happy to hear like this shift and this networking and being together. And what is interesting is that what we learned from what happened and how are we going to use it for the future. So let's start with you, Ethan. So what are the lessons that we learned from the pandemic?
Well, certainly as Guillermo said, we did learn a lot about the resilience of people, of communities, of networks, and how place brings us together on every scale, and in communities and neighborhoods. We saw a great resilience of people helping each other, and then through these placemaking networks as well. One of the the big focuses with placemaking is sort of seeing how cities can become more open, more porous, more informal, and in a way the pandemic actually has facilitated and forced some of that to happen. With for better and worse. but again, it's an opportunity that can, if we harness it correctly, we can come out of this stronger, with cities that are more allowed to be shaped by the people, to better serve the people that live in them and that they're meant to serve. That reclaim these spaces to really build back stronger economically, culturally, socially, as well. Of course, if we don't do that, there's a risk that this fragility, this leads to sort of further breakdown or sort of entropy in some communities. So I actually think it's a bit of a race too, and we saw this very tangibly in New York here, where the open streets programs and the streeteries that occurred over the summer into the fall. There are 10,000 over 10,000 restaurants were allowed to reclaim the street spaces in front of their their restaurants, and some businesses, and there's still needed efforts to support the vendors to allow to use public spaces as well. But we saw that the neighborhoods, the streets, and the businesses that reclaim their public spaces are the ones that are thriving. And frankly, the areas that have not, where there wasn't this sort of organizing, that community building, those areas are struggling, and they don't feel as safe, they don't feel as loved. The people aren't as connected to those places. So we're seeing a sort of, for better and worse, a realization that people can reclaim their streets and add vitality to them more than ever right now, if they organize together, if they work together, if they're not just in it alone. So great places are possible. There's amazing open streets that are just, and it didn't cost anything really. It was about letting the community, the businesses use their streets, and they often took on some of the liability, the costs, a lot of the organizing work. And these are in residential neighborhoods and low income and rich neighborhoods. And people are more in love with the city, than ever in those places.
Yeah.
So it's the places that reclaim their streets, that can reconnect to each other, that be part of their placemaking process again, can have a great future right now.
Yeah. It's a great summary, then. Charlotte, what are the lessons that we learned from Europe during the pandemic, from the cities in Europe?
Yeah, what Ethan says, of course, resonates a lot with what we're seeing globally. I think one of the things that struck me most in the past year is that you all of a sudden, despite all the hardships that are caused by the pandemic, because they're really serious, and of course we need to realize also that a lot of entrepreneurs and people in the city are struggling at the moment. But again, talking about the resilience, you definitely saw that a lot of the sort of pending changes in cities were all of a sudden, by this fierce crisis situation, were made possible in such a pace that was unthought of pre-pandemic, I would say. So you definitely saw some of the cities take advantage of that, like the city of Milan, for example, who all of a sudden used the pandemic to create 20 kilometers of bike lanes that they were already planning but had a hard time pushing through, as I understood. Or right now, the city of Barcelona is really using this momentum, the sort of the importance of public space that has been shown by the pandemic, to pedestrianize one in every 3 streets at the moment in Barcelona, or taking Las Ramblas back into the hands of locals by investing in culture and creativity and local shops instead of an inner city that's been hollowed out by tourism. So there's many of these examples where cities are using this moment to scale up the potential, to organize deliberative processes to talk about the impact of cities. I was talking to the city of Nantes yesterday, and they're inviting 80 citizens to actually talk about this impact and deliberatively talk about the recovery for post-pandemic. So there's many great opportunities there, but the coming time will be crucial if we speak about how all these temporary experiments will be scaled up to more permanent change. And I think that goes with showing the impacts of the changes that have been made, making sure that models are in place. And also, if we speak about the recovery, it's also like, it was, of course, a sort of panic reaction of all those entrepreneurs to find different means to generate their income. But there is a serious risk that, of course, a lot of shops and local smaller scale entrepreneurs will go out of business, especially now that there's a second or sometimes even third wave going over the globe. So it is a crucial time how we're going to work together to get the support mechanisms in place, because there is a high risk that our cities will be hollowed out if other people step in and buy up shop, and big international investors with not so good intentions, let's say, buy up inner cities. And so it's a moment to really step back, learn from what we've seen, the assets and the values that has been, I think, really like surfaced by the pandemic, and make sure that we really use them and exchange on how we can let them lead to systemic change, I'd say.
Yeah. So many important lessons, and I hope that we're really going to consider them when we continue to plan our cities and develop our cities. So, Guillermo, what would you like to add for lessons that we learned or that you learned as well?
I think there's opportunity to speak and to tell the stories of great cities and cases of people that transform their public space into great places in this pandemic. And that was I think about people in Porto Alegre in Brazil, in Barranquilla in Colombia, here in Tijuana in Mexico. So fantastic stories that they need to be shared. And they need to be shared because, and Ethan, you say very well, many comments I've been with you about lighter, quicker, cheaper. It's about taking out this fatigue of planning and transforming it into real change. And that's what these cases, as Charlotte has tell you, and the little ones I know here in Latin America, these are great cases of these really small, fast, not expensive ideas implemented, and that they actually help recover the community. And that's what we need to start sharing in the next months. And that's what we need to start also expanding. So it's not about creating against roads and bridges or huge parks, and it's about these small little community-based places that we need to start speaking about, and that could lead a enormous global change in how we approach our city.
Guillermo, do you think really, like, when the pandemic is over, hopefully soon, do you think really that we're gonna pay attention to things that happened during the pandemic, or we'll just go back to normal and keep going with our city as how we usually do?
I wish it would be like a nightmare, like when you wake up and everything goes back to normal. But it unfortunately will not be like that. It will be a painful and hard recovery for our economies, our tourism, our cities, our communities, our restaurants. It will be a painful waking up. So that unfortunately, so that's why placemaking is such an amazing tool for communities to transform their cities and.
Ethan, would you like to add something? Are we going to really learn something and implement what we learned?
I am afraid that it might be too easy to bounce back in some ways. That will want to just sort of slide back into normal. We've all become a little lazy. We've become sort of consumers of solutions, and while a lot of these ideas have gone viral and people are excited about it, we've also become a little passive in our homes. As we have receded perhaps a little bit into our private spaces, into our private lives, and it's hard to sort of break back out and reconnect with, be part of our public lives again. And so placemaking is going to be all the more important to facilitate that. People will experiment with being open and connected, and again, and this is, we have to give them great experiences to want to open up bigger and realize what we're missing a little bit, but how we can do things differently. So it's a short little window we have to figure this out, and it's going to be, there are some of the parts of the crisis will continue, as Guillermo says, and will we'll need to keep addressing them. But this is a fertile time, I would say, especially around tourism, which is really one of the most interesting opportunities for the reinvention, and how we can get, the tourism industry has spent most of its money on just sort of an extractive experience of marketing that extractive experience of place. And if we shift some of that focus towards placemaking, to working with existing communities to improve the places for and by their own populations, they can reinvite people, tourists back into them on their terms and give everybody a better experience, have tourists connect deeper, spend their money in ways that contribute more to the local place, go slower, create a more virtuous cycle between tourists and locals. And again, the places that do that well will be the ones that thrive the most, the ones that benefit the most from a more regenerative tourism that people are talking about. So there's a huge opportunity. That's just one example of the different sectors that can really reinvent themselves around place coming out of this crisis.
Yeah, we have a big opportunity now to, as you mentioned, to reinvent places and cities as well. So Charlotte, I see you want to say something. My question is, are we really going to learn, or are we going to just forget and keep going as how we did before?
Well spotted, Mustafa. No, I'm in a way, I'm reminded of the early years when I was a professional that was in light of the economic crisis, like the days after the economic crisis of 2008, 2009. And I certainly grew up as a professional being extremely optimistic about the resilience and the wealth of civic-driven initiatives and communities taking the lead across the globe in all these placemaking initiatives. And I did see, like, at some point that economy picked up as regular, and there was a large pushback from the sort of when pressure was, like, when the economy was back, let's say. And I'm thinking with this crisis that I'm really hoping that this time we will use the opportunity a bit more to really map out and showcase sort of the strength of all these initiatives combined, because it's really what Guillermo is saying. It's not about only the big efforts, but it's about strategically connecting all these small efforts, because together they make they determine the resilience of these cities and communities. And I really hope, I'm hopeful, but also a bit anxious that as soon as the economy picks up and we are recovered, that we go back to business as usual. And we cannot afford that, I would say. So I'm really hoping that this time around we will be a bit more appreciative of all these efforts, and we will see a bit more radical changes in cities also realizing that these efforts are important, and that we've seen in the pandemic that all the communities were relying on these types of initiatives again. And now I'm hoping that we'll see them for how valuable they are and take them along in the future planning of our cities.
Yeah, I love this positive energy that coming from you, and I would love that. Let's go into 2021. So Charlotte, what is your wish or wishes for the new year?
Yeah, I'm really, really hoping that we keep this conversation going about sort of the more fundamental questions underneath what we're all doing across the globe, and how we can make sure that co-creation moves beyond sort of experimentation, but really becomes sort of the new normal, if we can use that word once more. And because I am hopeful that with all the larger issues that we have coming up, it is a necessary step that we take. And I think the placemaking networks across the globe are connecting on this mission, and we all have the capacity to change parts of the systems all around the world, and that's also what makes us so strong together. And we're hoping to connect many more advocates who have the same goal and the same mission for the coming years. So
Guillermo, tell me, what is your wish for the new year?
I wish that recovery goes as less painful as possible to our communities. That all the things that been wins in this pandemic, like bike lines, pedestrianized streets, stay that way. Really stay that way, and I think that's a push of us as activists to continue telling our city officials that that's like you said, like the new normal. Like that's how things should start to be now and forever, and that's and to continue having great projects for everyone in the network. That's what will make us stronger. Like if everyone in their cities, in their communities have small projects or big projects, but they have projects and they have work and they can experiment and they can share that work. That would be fantastic for our network.
Yeah, I hope so. Amazing. Thank you, Guillermo. So, Ethan, tell me about your wishes.
Well, my wishes are, really what you're hearing is that people involved in placemaking around the world have incredible dreams and visions, and we want to sort of turn upside down the shaping of cities to start with their vision, and that's what placemaking and PlacemakingX has been about. Has been uncovering and releasing this creativity that is inherent in so many people from so many different disciplines, backgrounds, demographics, and just sort of facilitating, amplifying their stories, their efforts, and connecting them to because we've found that there's people all over the world that are doing this in different ways and calling it different things, and but are often alone, and they're seen as a little crazy or very passionate, but so it's simply we found there's such magic and power in connecting these people, helping them learn from each other. As Charlotte said, that everyone has a piece of the answer. Alone, we're not shifting the paradigm, we're not creating systemic change, but if we can weave our stories together a little bit, we start to create incredible learning and power. We start to create a real systemic paradigm shift that can really go viral, but in a really common sense, natural way. This isn't some new solution. We're all still learning. The learning curve's huge. It's a lens that enables learning, that enables facilitation, organizing and capacity to take on bigger challenges. Continually building up, and it also allows for mistakes, and and keeps us all in check as we think bigger. But what we need to go viral, and one of my biggest concerns is placemaking. Has been. We're getting good momentum around sort of the activation of places, but how does it start to really shape land use and sort of more capital flows, really? Because the dominant model of development of urbanization is still about extracting from place. So one of the things we're starting to work on for the coming year is connecting the business leaders, the developers that are leading the way, to show their stories. And to help them learn from each other, because they're all doing pieces of it right, but not all of it, and then to figure out how to collectively communicate that, so we can turn upside down the shaping of development to start with places and show that creates more shared value, still some profit, but how to get that model to go viral. That we need a different virus essentially that's of positivity, of these virtuous cycles of contributing to place, so that wins, rather than the extractive models, the taker culture that's still dominating, many disciplines and many cultures around the world.
Very, very interesting wishes and reflections. So yeah, again, I'm very grateful that you give your time to record the episode, and I would love that we finish this episode that you give me one question or takeaway message and one hashtag to the episode. Let's start with you, Ethan.
Well, hashtag, I know it will be a big focus for the new year, and I think Placemaking Europe has started this, is placemaking for recovery, placemaking the number 4 recovery, because we need to figure out how the placemaking community, how placemaking can help drive the recovery for all kinds of communities around the world. And so that's really my my wish, my next action is we to collectively create a roadmap, a set of inspiring examples, solutions, and a team of people around the world that can facilitate and support communities to recover through placemaking.
Thank you. So, Charlotte, one hashtag and one takeaway message or a question for us to reflect.
Wow. So Ethan just
Sorry,
he took your hashtag, so you need to find a new one now.
I'll go because I was really inspired by what Ethan was saying, because that is definitely a very important subject to speak about development in cities in a much more regenerative way. So I'm going to go with hashtag place-led development to finish up Ethan's reflection. Because I'm really hoping that sort of idea of regenerating cities in the aftermath of the coronavirus, but I think it's a more general thing, restoring balance in our cities in a way that it provides enough for everybody that is concerned. So that's also why I'm so strong about co-creation, is because I believe if everybody's involved in the process, it also means that interests are balanced in a much more natural way. And I really hope that we'll do that in a professional way, because of course there's a lot of participation that is more window dressing than actual processes of co-creation. But let's hope that by building capacity across the globe, we really all together have the potential to facilitate these processes in a meaningful way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charlotte. Guillermo, I'm waiting for your hashtag and your takeaway message.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be like 2021 and then we're gonna be in a after COVID world. It's gonna be slow, so we still need to take care of each other. We need to still we prefer to be and to meet our friends, our family in public space than in closed spaces. So continue getting physical distance is important, and that will be my hashtag. Hashtag physical distance rather than social distance, because that's being a clear message since the beginning of the pandemic, and what we're having right now is physical distance, but amazing social connections between people from around the world. So continue getting your connections stronger, but continue having hashtag physical distance.
Yeah, thank you so much, Guillermo. And thank you so much, Ethan and Charlotte. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast and hopefully talk to you again in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You learned something new and also got inspired by the guest. Don't forget to share the episode on your social media and recommend it to people you think they are really interested in this topic. Thank you so much again for giving your valuable time to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.